Please, and our guests will come out and sit. One more chair, please. We have a free chair. And then, hey, please take, chance and then, to ask question. You have to try to learn, right? To ask, not only just listen. Yeah, try to ask question. They welcome. We will have about 10 minutes. And Annie, 有冇問題啊？有啊 ，OK, please. 有冇咪啊？有。
I can use the reporter's mic.
你想落嚟有冇咪啊？好啲我哋冇啊，壞咗。你落嚟啦。
唔使啦呢度。
唔使，我哋大聲啲啦。Okay, either Chinese or English. English, right? Okay.
Firstly, I'm not here for my liberal studies or anything like that. Actually, I have two questions. One to Mr. Benny Tai, and then to also Pooja and Audrey.
Sorry, Audrey is gone because she's something
I'll
to
say
do.
Pooja can answer that. Firstly, Mr. Benny Tai, are there any other alternatives instead of occupying Central? Why? Because a lot of people have asked me, why occupy Central? It's, you have working class people going there and you're going to disrupt them. Taxi drivers, when I'm taking a taxi, I always hear people saying, oh, occupy Central is going to be bad. And then also a question is, because you see in Egypt, you see in Taiwan, they occupy the symbols of the government. And also in Hong Kong, we've seen it with the liberal, with the national education.
Yeah, right.
Where why occupy Central? I mean, I do support it, but I just want to know why so I can answer.
Yeah, right. Well, surely we have considered all these issues that why Central? Now, that's a very famous American professor. His name is called Gene Sharp, and he has written a lot of work on nonviolent actions in different, actually influencing the whole world. And in his work, he pointed out one thing: you have to find the weak point of your opponent. And what is the weak point of Hong Kong, if you say? Hong Kong is more an economic city rather than a political. So where is the part that will influence the economy the most? And that will be the weak point of your opponent. And that means that your action will be able to generate the biggest possible result. And that is the reason why we choose Central, because that will be the place that will generate the biggest pressure on the government if we have the people there. So actually, some people suggest that why not occupy the Tuen Mun landfill? Actually, you can occupy there forever, but the problem is that we occupy Tuen Mun landfill. No one will care about us. So now there are alternatives. Like we might continue to have the possessions. We may occupy also the government office, the outside, just like the national curriculum incident. We might, but just that we have to prepare for an action that's powerful enough that could generate the pressure. And so that's we have talked about Occupy Central. And we know that people will be affected to a certain extent. But I think that's all non-violent actions. People will be affected. But I will say that we have to consider not only about the short-term economic loss to Hong Kong people or the Hong Kong society. Think about the long-term loss that we have already suffered because we do not have a legitimate government. And we may incur even higher costs if we could not have universal suffrage in 2017. So I think that is a cost that we have to pay. And the point that I have not mentioned that for those who are considering whether you join the movement, I will urge you to consider also whether you are prepared to pay a price for democracy for Hong Kong. I'm not just everywhere just asking people to join. I think I'll follow Martin Luther King's kind of way, is that we are not just going everywhere and ask the people to join. What we do is we just tell you what is the situation, what might be the cause, and think carefully that whether you are prepared to pay a price for that. And if you're willing, careful calculation, that may affect your future. I would surely urge young people not to participate. That's I've mentioned it many times. People like long hair and I, that we are old enough, and the opportunity cost is much lesser. So maybe we should do more, but just consider the course. Okay? And
So just one more from Pooja, because in our contract sometimes our head office or our HR policy is that you need to seek permission to protest or in any kind of if you're going for demonstration. Isn't that a bit unlawful, or is there something that is a bit tricky? It seems like they're controlling us. We have to seek permission before we join such things. I don't know what's your take on that.
You asked a very good question, because I've just finished drafting the latest joint submission of NGOs to the International Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights at the UN. This time I will not go, but our other NGO representatives are going. And one paragraph that we put there is to ask the committee to urge NGO corporate boards to stop interfering with the personal rights to participate in political movements by social workers in Hong Kong. So the problem you described, where your workplace restricts your exercise of your political freedoms, is one that other social workers like yourself also experience. And that prohibition being imposed by your employer is an unlawful curtailment of your own personal political rights. They are not entitled to take those away from you. Usually we fear the government being the ones to suppress those rights. But in many instances in Hong Kong, because we have quite a conservative corporate culture, NGO staff do experience that pressure. My advice to you would be to talk to your...
I already signed the contract.
You signed the contract. Well, then you probably need independent legal advice. And I think there are plenty of people who can give you that. But your position is a strong one. Your rights to participate politically have nothing to do with your work and your right to employment. So those two things have to be separated. But I would say you need to be properly protected. So get some legal advice. There are lots of people who will give it to you for free.
My question is to anyone. Say we are fighting for universal suffrage through university. Say we achieve that in the next few years. What happens in 2047?
I think you are pointing out about the future of Hong Kong, and that's actually also Hong Kong's future is closely related to the future of China. Now, maybe I can give you a short answer to this: is that I think in 2047, China will be very different. It will not be the same China, because China has also undergone a process of globalization and modernization. Actually, I teach a course in university about the modernization and the development of constitution in China. That maybe even earlier than Hong Kong, if we were not to have universal suffrage in 2017, that China might have universal suffrage earlier than Hong Kong. But likely that we will have universal suffrage earlier than China if we have universal suffrage in 2017. But the present governance mode in China cannot sustain. I think that's the opinions of many scholars and researchers about the development of China. And actually the Chinese Communist Party is also facing very similar situations internally as in Hong Kong we are facing about the illegitimacy of the government. And they may still maintain their legitimacy through their good performance, their economic growth. But can China maintain this economic growth forever? And they actually foresee the problems. And whether they are willing to introduce political reform, I think they're still struggling on this point. My opinion is that they cannot wait any longer. They must introduce political reform within China. If not, the whole regime will collapse soon. So 2047 is too long, but I think that at that point, both Hong Kong and China would be having universal suffrage or the kind of democratic system.
You asked a question that is really, really important, and what I say to my students is this: more of us need to ask that question sooner, rather than wait for 2040s to come and then come up with occupy something else at that point. Okay, so that's a really, really important question, because that is in essence the expiry date for the one country, two systems. And if one country, two systems is not working effectively now, there's no necessary reason to believe that it would work any better in the future. So the time to ask these questions is now, and not wait for the expiry date. We may have other movement leaders and things like that, but the time to ask and answer that question or demand answers is now.
I think if you ask Leo Messi, what do you think about Barcelona? He said, well, I'm going to try my best to play and score, I think it's the right attitude. You know, after all, in the long run, we'll be dead. Okay? but before we will be passed away, we need to have a goal to go for our life. Okay? That is the meaning of life. Otherwise, there will be no meaning of life. Society is a combination of different people. So there's a will, there's a way. My argument is very simple. If you ask what will happen in 2047, you better ask what will happen in 2017. Okay? So I think as a Chinese, a Hong Kong Chinese, what bear in my mind is that the struggle in Hong Kong is a passage of the democracy of China. We are in the position. That's why, as I say, if Leo Messi got the ball in the penalty shoot,